I've never seen a diamond in the flesh. I cut my teeth on wedding rings.
Dude, that's pretty cool.
Man,
On this
that
sad
is a
clown.
sad clown.
Proud of my address.
Dude, that's pretty good.
This is The Gloom, bringing you weekly interviews with F3 Omaha Pack, exploring their F3 experiences and finding those sticky elements that create the glue in the gloom.
I can genuinely say the guy that's on the podcast today is actually somebody that I've known for quite a while. Was in a men's group with this guy, men's Bible study. Gosh, would have been over 7-8 years ago now, before my first child was born. So I've just had a chance to know this guy and then to reconnect through F3. He's a fantastic leader, and you will know him as the guy who launched Mainstage, which has become just a staple AO in the Southwest. So we've got our man Sister Act on the cast today. So Sister Act, if you would, we would like to start as just what was your first workout like, who EH'd you, and kind of how'd you get the name Sister Act?
Yeah, it's great. Well, thanks for having me, man. Yeah, love the Gloom, love F3 Omaha. So it's fun to be able to talk with you for a while. So in 2020, COVID was a major impact to kind of my story because I had been working out with Grills for a lot of years on Tuesdays and Thursdays mornings, and real early. He had kind of told me about this F3 thing that he was doing just kind of on Mondays and whatever, but we always just worked out on Tuesdays and Thursday mornings. And then when gyms closed and when sort of everything kind of closed, he and I stopped working out at Genesis. So I kind of in those first few weeks, or several weeks, kind of like everybody, got used to just kind of being home and being around my family and sleeping in a little bit more and, just all that, and just wasn't working out. Meanwhile, Grills was, kind of accelerating and actually involving himself more in F3 during that time. And finally, I just kind of got fed up with laying around, and I knew I needed to be active. So I said, all right, forget it, man. I'll just come, and I wasn't like, it wasn't begrudgingly, but it was just kind of like, all right, you've been talking about it long enough. I get it. Okay, cool. I knew that you were a part of it. I go to church with Firewalker and with Tonight Show. So I had known kind of what F3 was, and I think was kind of excited to finally see what it was. My first post, though, was at Futurama, and this is a story that a lot of guys have heard me say, but I remember we had just gotten done with a grinder going up and down a hill, and just, I was smoked. I mean, I hadn't done workouts like these in, a long time. So Two-Step kind of comes alongside me as we're going from, place to place. Like we just finished a grinder, we were going to the stairs or whatever. And he goes, hey man, he goes, you doing okay? And I was like, yeah. He goes, hey, I get it. I the first time I worked out with F3, I thought I was going to throw up too. And I'm like, what? I didn't say I felt like I was going to throw up, but I looked like I was going to throw up. And so Two-Step, saw that. He came and he gave the support. And so that's, whatever. So needless to say, it was kind of a shock to the system, that first workout. But it was awesome. COT came around, Namarama, and there was me, and what was great was that was the same day that Hipster was EH'd, literally, like just in the park. Tater Tot ran up the hill, was like, hey dude, you should come down here and come work out with us. And anyway, I think maybe that was that same day. We could check, but I stood in the circle to get a name, and I just said kind of the really basic stuff. my name's Rob. I'm this, I'm that. I've got this many kids, whatever. And then I said, I lead music in a church. And it took about 3 seconds for I think Othello and maybe somebody else to yell out Sister Act.
Yeah.
Which is just, yeah, it's awesome. And I think even Othello was like, yeah, I was trying to, after I said Sister Act, I was trying to get Whoopi like in there. But Sister Act stuck. So yeah. Funny enough, I also and I actually forgotten about this until later. I auditioned for Sister Act 2 in this like big open casting call thing in St. Louis where I grew up. And yeah, so there's that part of it too. So so it's just poetic. Yeah, it's poetic. So.
Yeah, it's awesome, and it's a good name. Are you so you're a fan of the Sister Act series or movies, right?
Absolutely, man. Sister Act 2, Lauryn Hill from the
Yeah,
Fugees. I mean, like, give me a
yeah,
break. She's
yep,
so good. That's good
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
those are classics. Well, and it's cool. Sometimes it just takes time, right? It's like something you've known about for a while, and the pandemic. Honestly, I think from what I've heard a lot of guys on the podcast even just say the pandemic kind of was that push. Everything else was closing up, and so I love that you got involved. It's cool to reconnect. So for some guys that maybe don't know, so this men's Bible study was like it was you, Tonight Show, Firewalker, myself, Schnitzel, for guys that know him. Schnitzel's was in that group for a while. Who else? I feel like there's a
well, Grills
Grills
also.
obviously.
Um, I'm trying to think if there's any other guys that have ended up in F3. I don't know. We all kind of have a mutual friend, Chris. I mean, the group started actually as a couples small group, a couples Bible study that was kind of based out of Brookside Church, where we all attend or attended, and that's where I'm on staff at a church at Brookside Church, and so yeah, the couples group kind of split up just because of just like families were growing, and it was hard scheduling, all kind of stuff. But we still wanted to get together in some capacity, and so we kind of formed the men's group, and that was great because it just brought in a whole bunch of other kinds of guys, and it's really morphed throughout the years, and it actually is still going now. I was just there this morning actually, and yeah, it's cool now. It's great. There's out of 7 or 8 guys, there's 4 or 5 or whatever that go to Brookside. There's 3 or 4 or whatever that don't, and that was always kind of the cool thing about that group. It was really just open to whoever kind of wanted to come and just dig into to the Bible. It's a Bible study, so
Yeah. Well, and I think, that group plays a special part in my story, just because before, it was like right around the time I was, started getting a master's degree, and then I started having some issues with substance abuse. And, what I did at the time that, is just looking back was I created separation with that group because I knew that group would hold me accountable for doing the right thing. And so I kind of made excuses and kind of fell off. And so to reconnect with several of you through F3 has just been really cool for me. The other thing that I don't know if, as I'm thinking about this, that group originally, when I started going, we were meeting at Paradise Bakery. And when we started Paradise Island, there was some, kind of connection there, right? Of like, hey, let's, can we get some guys together for some discussion or, in a workout at a very sentimental kind of location. So it's cool just to reconnect, and life has a funny way of circling you back with those key relationships. But so fitness wise,
yeah.
So before F3, you were doing some working out regularly, and I feel like do you bike too? Is that a hobby of yours or a fitness activity?
Yeah. Yep. I ride mountain bikes and ride the mountain bike trails around town. People always say like mountain bike in Omaha, but I mean, it's Omaha's got an awesome like single track, just huge set of places to go and run. And bike. Um, it's it's actually pretty amazing. There's a lot of people that come into town. Like you just hear stories, from the bike community. People come in town, they're like, "Oh my gosh, like you guys have really awesome trail system. Like this is awesome." There's a lot of ownership, so it's pretty cool. Yeah, and before F3, I always tried to stay active. Worked out with, like I said, with grills. I went to a personal trainer for a while, and he helped with a lot of strength stuff. I had run like a half marathon. This was a long time ago. So I've always kind of done it. Uh, you know, I think the tough thing is, and F3 has been so great for me to understand what it truly takes to get into shape, because I think for so long I focused on my king, thinking, that, fitness is going to like sort of solve everything, not taking time to understand my queen and my jester, and not taking time to understand the diet part of things, and then also just kind of like the hangups kind of things, and that almost like that kind of mental battle stuff. So I mean, it's created for me way more than just fitness that I was experiencing doing things either alone in a gym or even just with a trainer or with a buddy. It's such a more well-rounded experience for sort of like the wholeness of life, like the all of you, the fitness, the fellowship, and the faith. I mean, they all come together to, I think, improve every part of a high impact man. You know what I mean? It's there's a lot that F3 provides that you can't just get in the gym by yourself. Yeah.
Well, and
It's pretty cool.
I think you're spot on too, because one of the things I've realized is like it's like a lifelong journey, right? It's not like because so often my goals before F3 were like a certain number of miles in a year, or a certain like distance or whatever, and you realize like, actually, I just want to make sure I can still work out when I'm 60, because you see these guys that are, 50, 60 years old, and you're like, I want to still be able to do this stuff when I'm that age. So I may need to like,
Yeah.
slow down so I can have the longevity. But what, so as I think about, the second F, and, so you came in, you knew some of the guys already, but how did that second F journey, or that fellowship, journey go for you as far as building relationships in the group? What did you find effective there?
Um, well, so the second F was, and still is, a pretty big deal to me. For those who don't know sort of what I do or whatever, I've been on staff at a church for a lot of years. And for most of those years, I'm in a different role now, but for most of those years, I was the guy up front singing and playing guitar and leading worship, and I organized the services and pick songs and organize volunteers and just that kind of stuff, for everything that related to whatever. So I'm up in front of people a lot, and therefore a lot of people know who I am, but at the same time, I don't really know who a lot of those people are. You know what I mean? Like so relationships for me, especially other guy relationships, it was always a matter of I had to very purposefully say, hey, I'm gonna like spend time working on a relationship with this guy, which wasn't always the easiest thing to do. And so for me, that probably before F3, I probably did not have super strong guy relationships in Omaha. I did guys like the mutual friend Chris that I was talking about, Grills, guys from work, from church, good guys around me, but not like just a network of guys that I felt like I could just sort of call anytime to go and hang out and do something fun, or mess around or whatever. The thing about like the second F for me, why it was so important, is because all of a sudden I had a bunch of guys who, for one, didn't necessarily necessarily know what I did for a living. And even if they did, they didn't really care, because in the gloom, it's not about who are you, what do you do. In the gloom, it's like, hey, how are you doing right now, and how can I help you? Like, oh, you're kind of lagging today. Great, I'll pick you up. Like, let's go, let's work out together, let's do this together, kind of a thing. And that camaraderie has been so big for me, because of the fact that I think sometimes in positions of leadership, it can get a little lonely. I mean, there's such thing as lonely leadership. You've got a whole company to run, or you've got a whole or you've got a whole family to raise, whatever it is. And sometimes you're so bogged down in all that stuff that it just gets a little lonely. The very first COT that I gave at Mainstage, at the Mainstage launch, it was called No Lonely Leadership. And I don't want to be the kind of person who's leading alone, especially if I'm leading something big and important like a company or a family. You know what I mean? Like, I want to have support around me, and I don't want to do it alone, because I just know that I'm better with others. I'm so much better with the support of others than I am by myself. Yeah.
Man, that's phenomenal. Do you think, because one of the, and this is to me, I think just maybe an excuse I've told myself is maybe why I haven't gone back to the Friday morning group, but something about the workout, and maybe, something you just said made me curious, like maybe it's partially the workout and partially the anonymity within F3 that kind of breaks down those walls. And because it felt like at times with, and I'm a believer. I go to a church. I'm in a couple of different small groups, and but sometimes I feel like with, and I'll say church people, but but sometimes with church people, I have had a harder time letting my guard down than maybe with some guy I just met in the gloom. Like, I'll tell an F and G my whole story, but somebody in church I won't. And maybe that's a me thing, but I don't know. What do you see there? Is there anything that you've identified as maybe why that the gloom is a catalyst to some of those conversations?
I mean, I don't know necessarily why, but I absolutely agree. I mean, I absolutely agree. I even said to someone that kind of helps do some of the small groups, or that she does the small group stuff at our church. I said, you wish that when a new group forms, that the first thing they did was just like get together for chili or something. You know what I mean? Like, just have dinner, or like don't even start talking about what study they're going to do together, or don't say like, this is how I grew up. I grew up in this kind of a church, or I'm still like wrestling with God in my life. Don't even talk about that stuff. Just say, hi, my name is Rob, and these are my kids, and this is my wife. And then just let normal things sort of transpire. I think the beauty of F3 is, first of all, like, even if you had a name that was recognizable in town, like in Omaha, you don't get called by that name, and like people hardly even know that name. So it doesn't matter. So there's not like that, I mean, I think as guys, you go to a wedding or something, you meet a stranger, what's like the second question you ask? Like, oh, what do you do for a living? You know what I mean? Like, it's all this sort of almost kind of jockeying for, what kind of guy am I talking to? Is he important? Do I have a connection? Could this work? Could this be good? And in the gloom, it's just like, it's just not about that. It's just not about that, And so, yeah, I think the anonymity helps establish a very sort of mutual and like even bar, like right at the beginning,
Yeah.
And then, you meet guys like the plague, and you realize that you'll never run, 13,000 miles in a week like he does. So
no, it's funny too, because Icy Hot was saying, he enjoyed not talking about sports all the time, right? Because outside of F3, everybody wants to talk about sports. I'm sure, maybe for you, it's like, if everybody sees you as the worship leader, then their conversations always become like, immediately about, how godly they're behaving, or I don't know what that experience is.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I love those conversations when they happen naturally. But the beauty of F3 is that the anonymity allows those things to happen naturally.
Yeah.
You know, I think if you're involved in if you're at a church event, if you're at a sporting event, if you're at a something specific event, the conversation about that is going to be about that. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Especially if you're talking to someone who has some expertise in the area. And so, yeah. So if I'm at a small group and somebody knows that I'm on staff at a church, they're probably going to be like, hey, so about this sort of spiritual thing that's going on in my life. That's great. I would love to have that conversation, you know, but it almost seems forced. And what's cool about F3 is you get to know the guy first. You get to understand sort of who they are. You get to, you know, form an actual relationship. And then you can have some of those deeper conversations, which I think is so important. I think it's so important to have some trust and some relationship with somebody before you know, have a deep and meaningful relationship, or I mean, a conversation about things.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and the thing that I really love too is like you mentioned, how all three Fs kind of play off each other, right? So some of the second F stuff is like cafeteria or maybe Q source or some of the book studies, and those overlap, you know, really well with conversations about faith and what do we, you know, kind of the what, right? What happens when we die and what does that mean about how we live today? And you know, curious your thoughts. Have you had a chance to participate in Q source or any of the other second F events? I guess I feel like you've played music at several second F events, right?
So so just for sort of like just some fun stuff, I play at Stories Coffee House or coffee shop sometimes, and like some F3 guys will come, you know, and so like it's there just kind of like, you know, go have a beer, have some coffee, blow off some steam, and listen to Sister Act play some music, and that's super fun. I love doing that. I did play music and do a little bit of leading at the at last year's F3 Impact Retreat, which was an amazing retreat. Shout out for the one coming up in January. Yep, let's go. Here we go. But then other second F, I've done mostly more just kind of like the hanging out, like meeting guys, you know, for a happy hour or something like that. I have not really sort of committed myself to going through like the Q source material. I've read Free to Lead and did do at Mainstage. We did a series of 4 weeks where we did like at cafeteria go through Free to Lead, you know, as a group, you know, and we all had the book and we all read and we talked about it, and a different guy kind of led the discussion each week. So that was really cool. I think that stuff is super important. You know, I'm actually somewhat fascinated by all that Q source material. I'm like, dude, this is a really like well-written thing. Like there's a lot of really great stuff just to grab onto and incorporate in your life. So yeah, I think, yeah, it's pretty good stuff, but so I don't love to run. So going to Paradise and then hanging out after Q source or afterwards for Q source is not something I do very often.
Yeah, no, that's good. You know, one of the other book studies we did, I can't remember if you were in there or not, but Tonight Show and I think it was the former pastor at Brookside led a group of F3 guys and a couple Brookside guys in a study on meaning of marriage. It's a Tim Keller book, fabulous book. It's one of those that I'll read multiple times. But so there's still opportunity. You know, I think for us to keep adding other book studies because right, if the M is your most important relationship, let's dive in and figure out how do we do that well, because I think there's always opportunity there. But
Yeah. I'd say too, yeah, I'd encourage guys, you know, be looking for, like right now on Thursday mornings before Battlefield or the Coop. I jumped into that. There's like a book, kind of a book study that Samples and Bloodshot, and a lot of those guys have been doing Wentworth. They've been doing that for quite a while, and they just kind of go from book to book. And we're reading a great book right now. I knew the book, and I was excited to hear about it, so I was like, "Ooh, yeah, I'll jump into that." And it's been really cool. It's like a whole separate. It's like a whole nother group of like close men that I can like share that experience with. It's like that's been awesome for me.
Yeah, I used to go to that when I lived closer, and now getting there at 4:45 is a little tough. But that group, I think, especially through the pandemic, was really clutch in just being there. And we talked, that actually was the group that did Every Man's Battle.
Yeah, right.
That was a really cool book because there were so many guys that came out to talk through that. I think now you're doing Ragamuffin Gospel, right?
Yep, Ragamuffin Gospel. Ragamuffin Gospel. I mean, the book is all about, it's all about grace and our understanding of grace and how we may never fully understand it, but man, oh man, like can and should we appreciate it? It's just it's a great book.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about faith from your perspective. I mean, obviously you're a Christian, you're involved in a church, but what's been your faith journey? And I'm also curious your thoughts on just how are we doing helping guys to navigate that their own spiritual journey?
Yeah. Um, well, um, I grew up at a house in a house where we went to church all the time, and I was a total church kid. I went to Bible studies and led music, in middle school and high school, for our youth group, and sang in like the church choir and that kind of stuff. But you can do something and for a long time and not fully like live it or like believe it. So in college, I met some guys who also played music, and they were Christian guys. And in hanging out with them, I basically realized like, oh, this is what it means to actually be someone who follows Jesus. You know what I mean? This is what it means to really to get into some sort of like kind of specific kind of religious-y terms, to really like surrender to the lordship of Jesus, like to make him not only your savior and say like, hey, I'm so thankful that he died on the cross and I can go to heaven, but also to say, okay, but how does that affect my every single day? Like, how does that affect my relationships, my habits, my thoughts, my desires, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it wasn't really until college that I realized this is what Christianity really looks like, or following Jesus really looks like. I started playing music with those guys, and I was in a Christian band for a long time, and we traveled all around the country and played in churches and music festivals and just all that kind of stuff, weekend retreat things for youth groups and big whatever gatherings and all that stuff. And so anyway, through all of that, I was always sort of kind of a leader. I was a music leader and a music performer. But then, off stage, you're hanging out with kids, and they have questions about Jesus, and so we were talking to them about their faith, and so that was a cool opportunity. I never really thought that I wanted to work in a church, but when my wife and I moved back to Omaha, we had been living in Nashville. And when we moved back to Omaha, and I stopped touring, opportunity came up at the church that we were attending, and it was just like a 2x4 to the head. It was like, this okay. Maybe I didn't really want to work at a church before, but clearly, Lord, you are telling me that this is where I need to go. So I've been in that kind of now church leadership for like 16 years, and so faith has always been not just a thing that I have and believe, but it's been something that I do, even like quote unquote professionally, you know what I mean, and have done. And that gets a little, I'm not gonna lie, man, that gets a little that gets a little hard sometimes, because sometimes I'm not a great leader. Just like all of us. I mean, sometimes I'm not in a great place, or I fail and I sin and I'm stupid, or whatever it is, But man, I think we're called to lead where we are, and we're called to lead the things that we're called to lead. And so you just keep on going. And that's kind of been my at least my faith leadership journey. I think the thing too about my faith journey is that I've never really I've never really let go of this idea that like, hey, it could be both, you know, like people are like, are you this thing or are you that thing? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I think God is bigger than that thing or that thing. Like it could be both, you know?
Yeah.
So what I try to do is really kind of keep focus on the one big thing, and that's Jesus. I mean, that's, you know, all of Christianity, it's called Christianity because the Savior, because Jesus is the thing that we should focus on. And I think when we do that, we can open ourselves up to more relationships with people who maybe think or believe a little bit differently than we do. But I think it also helps us lead the people that are asking questions about God. Because I think the thing that confuses people so often is, well, what am I supposed to do? Like what do I have to, like, where do I go and what should I read and I mean, so what do I do? You know, because that's the way we think. You know, we buy a car, a brand new car. Well, what do I do? Like, how do I get my phone attached and the garage door opener, and how much gas does it take? I mean, that's how we're programmed. That's how we. But the thing about following Jesus is that really, if you believe and if you follow, like, you're there. You know what I mean? Like, there's not a whole lot you have to do. There's things that you'll eventually want to do, but at the beginning, it's just that. So I think keeping a focus solely on Jesus and the true meaning of Christianity and the gospel and that kind of thing really helps conversations with people who are asking questions, because it's like, hey, look, let's focus on one thing, you know. And don't get me wrong, it's not an easy thing to focus on, but at least it's just one. You know? At least it's just one.
Yeah. Well, and you know what I love that you said is, like, you don't really have to do anything. And the things that, you know, at least that I would recommend you do are seem passive, right? So like surrender is not doesn't feel like an active contribution, you know. And
That's good.
I think that, you know, for me, it's like, okay, how do I surrender? And then to me, it's like, well, it's a relationship. So what do you do in a relationship? Well, you get to know the person, right? Get to know what do they do? What are they about? What did they say? And some of that comes through, you know, studying the Bible, and you know, so it's hard. I think that's the hardest thing for me, is actually, it's better if I don't do anything.
Right.
I get in the way a lot.
Yeah. I do think that it's important that I reiterate that there are things that you will want to do, you know. Eventually your heart is changed. You realize, oh wow, like, okay, I do want to change that thing, or I want to add that thing because that's really like helping my relationship. But man, you know, just starting with the one focus and focusing on improving your relationship with one thing is it's so key. Yeah, that's good.
You know, the thing I hear a lot of guys in F3, their experience, right? I mean, it's almost, you know, it's I grew up going to church. Church was a checklist thing. I went to college. I stopped going to church, and I've never really been back. And, you know, it's almost, it's similar to like a guy who's been to F3 and doesn't come back. They don't, you know, it's like they don't want to be judged for their sabbatical, right? From never.
Yeah, which is just, I mean, which is a complete bull at F3. I mean, like, show me a time that anybody's ever come back after a while and people have been like, where have you been, man?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like, no, it's like a hug. It's like get over here. I mean, it's like, you know, that's another just amazing thing about F3, I think.
Yeah. What do you think? So for guys, and I think we're, you know, one of the goals with the third F or with Faith is like, can we just help give a guy access to, you know, resources or other men that they can have a discussion with and kind of begin to explore what does faith look like for them? But how do you think we're doing there? Do you feel like have you had opportunities to have, you know, those discussions with guys, or you feel like we've got outlets for guys to really dig in and explore what faith means to them?
I think we have, yeah. I think there's, excuse me. I think there's the different book studies that we do, you know, like the ones we mentioned, Ragamuffin Gospel or whatever. There's the Impact Retreat. But those are pretty specific, you know. I mean, like that's for somebody who kind of knows the lane they want to kind of roll in, you know. Now, don't get me wrong, and I mean this from my heart. Like, if somebody came to the F3 to the Impact Retreat and was just asking questions about God and just didn't really know, but at least knew that they were asking questions and they were looking for an answer, that's amazing. Like that, you know, F3, it's open to all men. I mean, so if you want to be at that thing and you're asking those questions, please, please, please come. And I think we see that in COTs and in closing prayers. I mean, there's some guys who they're not prayers. They don't pray, you know, and so they pass it off to the site queue or to a buddy or whatever it is. And I think that's amazing. Like, hey, this isn't like where I'm comfortable. This isn't my jam. So can somebody else do it? It's still important enough that we're going to do it, but I'm just not there. Great. Yeah. Like, good for you. I think that's great. But what's cool is they pass that off to somebody else and somebody else prays a prayer. And then, you know, the person who didn't want to pray hears that and they're like, huh, well, that wasn't too hard. I could maybe do that next time. You know what I mean? Like, or maybe they don't. But anyway, I think the fact that faith in any form and in any stage is welcomed and encouraged at F3 is a huge reason that I love it so much. I'm a guy who wants to come alongside people in that journey, you know. And so yes, I've had, you know, a couple conversations with guys about faith matters and beliefs, and again, some of that, like, what do I do, you know, kind of stuff. And so I think just the fact that we say it all the time, that it's on all of our shirts, that, you know, that we emphasize, you know, even just the word faith. I think we're giving guys opportunity to dig in and research something that's really important. Yeah, really important.
Well, and I think it's the relationships too that allow the opportunity to ask questions. I remember, I'll never forget, I gave a COT one time that somehow I, you know, basically ended with like, you know, you have to take that and surrender it to Jesus or whatever was, you know, kind of something I had said. And after the workout, I just love the curiosity of guy, right? So Doppler came up to me and he's like, I hear what you're saying, but like, how do you do that? Like, how do you know? And so just realizing like, oh man, I'm, you know, dropping some cliches or, you know, some things that, like, you know, not everybody knows what does that actually look like? Like, how do you surrender and some of that stuff. So I just love those conversations are always available. So I want to get your thoughts on leadership, and I think where I would love to just kind of hear your experiences. Like, I don't know if you have any good stories from your VQ, but then I would love to hear the kind of the genesis of Mainstage and the launch and how all of that went from your perspective.
Yeah. No, my VQ was pretty. It was pretty. It was pretty standard. It was a Battlefield, which was cool because Grill's, you know, again, close, really close friend. So to do it at his site was awesome. It was miserable. It was like really, really rainy and cold. It was not a pleasant day in the gloom, but yeah, but it was awesome. So Mainstage, you know, it was funny. Before I even knew that Mainstage was a possibility or was anything, I was intrigued enough with F3 Omaha that I just wanted to be part of it.
Yeah.
You know, and I still do. I'm thankful that I still get to do little leadership things here and there and just whatever and just whatever. I love what it does for guys, and if I can add to that, awesome. Like put me in, you know what I mean? But so I had kind of like said to Tater Tot at a workout some morning, like, hey man, like I love what's going on here. I'm new-ish, you know, but I like don't necessarily know where you need help, or if you need help, let me know, kind of a thing. If there's ever a site that needs a leader or something, I don't know, but I want to be involved because I like what's going on here. And so then in some conversations, I think with grills and that kind of stuff, started talking about like, he's like, well, I don't know, maybe maybe you open a site or something. And I was like, yeah, whatever. Like, what does that even look like, you know? And then there was a funny little series of things that happened. I went to Top Rope one morning, and like there were like 35 guys. That same day, Paradise had like 30 guys, and the week before that, F3 Nation had like tweeted back at Heavy Metal saying like 30 guys at a workout, looks like it's time to starfish. You know what I mean? Like, you know, so there was like this Wednesday bottleneck, you know, and I had kind of seen that, and it just was like, wait a second, I thought it was like plant grown sort of small workout groups for men, you know, like, you know, 18's that sort of magic number that, you know, F3 talks about. So I'm like, man, we need a release valve on Wednesdays. We
Yeah.
need, you know, whatever. And I just kept saying it. I think I had a conversation with you about it. I had, you know, conversations with Grills, Tater Tot. I just kept saying it. And it's like one of those like, well, careful what you say and how often you say it, because eventually someone's going to be like, why don't you either one, shut up, or two, do something about it?
Yeah.
And it just so happened that mine was my experience was the second. I did something about it at the sort of, you know, encouragement of leadership and friends and guys and that kind of stuff. So yeah, so I just looked at the map. I think Grills and I were looking at the map, and I was like, man, this is where a site needs to go in, because if you're coming from here, this part of town, there's nothing there. It's a long drive, all that kind of stuff. I knew a guy from the staff at Brookside, a young guy who was part of Millard South. He graduated from Millard South. He was on the cross country team, and I think was doing some coaching there and that kind of stuff. So kind of asked him about Millard South, emailed the athletic director and said, I'm part of this thing. We'd love to use your spot. And he was like, go ahead. And I was like, yeah, but I mean, I like gave him plenty of chances to be like, you know, actually don't, you know. I was like, yeah, but we could be there in the winter, even if there's like snow on the turf. Is that okay? And he's like, go ahead. I was like, yeah, and we might have like some like stuff, like some, you know, cinder blocks, or we might want to use the, you know, the other field, or we might be up by the flagpole. And he's like, yeah, you're fine. Go ahead. Like, stop asking me. I already said yes like 3 times ago. So anyway, yeah, that's how Mainstage was at least dreamed of. And then the name, you asked about the name earlier. So the band that I played in, that I talked about earlier, we were not like, we were successful. We, you know, that was our only job for, you know, 6, 7, 8 years. But we were not like successful like big bands are successful. You know, like we didn't have a huge hit on the radio. We didn't play the main stage. So we always played the stage in the parking lot, or we opened for the people who were playing on main stage. Like, so we never played main stage. But the beauty of F3 is that like everybody gets to play main stage. Yeah. Everybody, it even says, I had Tenderfoot and the logo that he designed for main stage. I had him put lead in a rotating fashion, because I think it's so amazing that in F3 everybody gets a shot. Well, everybody gets a shot at the mic. Like, yeah. we all get to lead. We all get to have our moment to use what we have to influence the lives of other guys, even for 45 minutes. You know what I mean? And I think that's super important. I think what F3 provides for guys is not only just like that fellowship and all that kind of stuff, but I mean, like the fact that we're asking guys to step up and take over and lead guys, and that we've got a supportive environment for that is just key. So I you know, for one, it's kind of like, yeah, I'm a musician. I played in bands, never got to play main stage, so I'm gonna call it main stage. But then also, like, just truly, I just loved the idea of everybody getting a shot at the mic. You know.
Yeah. Well, I love the analogy and just the connection to the led in a rotating fashion. You know, I think it's phenomenal. So I took advantage when I led at the main stage, and that was the first time I had done a freestyle rap intro.
Yeah.
And then, and then afterwards I was like, I'm going to do this more often. Cause I was a rapper in my, previous history. What was the name of your band? I keep wanting to ask you that.
It doesn't matter. Just don't even worry about it. No, I'm kidding. It's we used to literally say it's the worst name in rock and roll. We were called the Pool Boys,
The
as in
pool.
like,
Okay.
yeah, like a swimming pool, but it's not like a pool boy like in a speedo with like a what do they call those big cleaners that like the big
Yeah.
lawn cleaner thing, whatever. It's actually from a story in the Bible, and the way that our band formed, and then the way that the name was there, and some stuff we were involved in at University of Kansas. We had a little worship service that we started that actually grew into like there was like 800 people coming every single week just to come and sing worship songs and that kind of stuff. It was called Open Swim with the Pool Boys.
That's awesome. That's
Because
awesome.
everyone was invited, and it was open to all people. So anyway, yeah, we were called the Pool Boys.
Okay. I'm gonna look up some old Pool Boys tracks online.
You know what? There's some of it's not great, but some of it holds up, man. We're on, whatever, on Spotify and Apple Music and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm proud of those years and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. What as you're thinking about leadership and leading a site or even just being in the group and experiencing F3, what any advice that you would have for like maybe site cues or maybe it's not site cues, maybe it's just for packs in general or even for the new guy that shows up for the first time.
Yeah, I think I would just say uh, you probably won't realize it until you realize it, but um, but the value the of having a network of guys around you like you do with F3 is so unbelievable. So one, if you're a new guy, uh, take advantage of that network of people. And I don't mean like networking. Like I don't mean like job
Yeah.
wise. That's not what I mean. I mean like go to coffee, ask people questions, get to know them, do a happy hour, go serve at at a food pantry, be around those guys because the things that you'll learn and glean from other guys are awesome, even if they're completely different than you. I mean, just that you will grow as a person just by surrounding yourself with, I think the men of F3. And then for those who have been around a while, I would say remember that network of guys. Like think of them, care for them, reach out to them, help them improve, pick them up, uh, you know, ask them hard questions if you see that, whatever. Be there for when they need to ask you a hard question. Like we say lean in a lot. You'll hear that at COTs a lot and stuff. Lean in, like lean into, for the new guy, lean into the things that you have around you. You'll be surprised just how valuable it is to you in your life. But then lean into the guys around you in terms of how much influence are you having in some of those guys' lives? Because
Hmm.
man, like you never know what people need. I mean, people might really need to hear some encouragement from you. They might really need to have you, ask them a tough question,
Yeah.
or even, if the trust level is there, even kind of go, hey, dude, I'm not sure about that. I don't
Yeah.
think that's the, I don't think that's the best thing for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, Again, with the right trust level, but just I think understanding and leaning into the value of the guys around you is probably the advice that I would give.
Yeah, I love it. And my experience has been like some of my favorite moments in the gloom are guys kind of calling me out or helping, to correct maybe a negative attitude, right? Or like remember Grills helping me kind of like, hey man, we should talk about the people we love like in a respectful way, and just doing some correction like that. And that's when you have friends, right? When you've got people that are willing to say like, hey, I think the way you're acting is not aligned with who I know you want to be. And, so I love that. what about for you? You know, as we see you out there in the gloom, anything you're going through, or anything we could be praying for or encouraging you about?
Yeah, I mean, just sort of kind of basically and not too deep. I'm a guy. I'll probably always deal with my queen. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah,
Like just
yeah,
you know. Yeah, queen service has been awesome, but you open yourself up to to a lot when you say things like this. But yeah, man, you could always ask me about how my queen's going.
okay,
And
yeah,
I'll probably tell you it's going really well as I take a bite of whatever. So
yeah,
no, I'm kidding. But then I think I think one of the things that I've really valued seeing I've really enjoyed seeing the value get raised in around F3 is the mental battle part of things, and guys just saying, hey, it's normal to have tough thoughts and to struggle with things and to whatever. So that's kind of been I'm not going to say that I've been struggling, like mental battle wise lately, but just some different changes in my life in the last probably 3 years or whatever. It's been a little dodgy in terms of some of that stuff. But staying out there, staying involved, remaining faithful to the things that I know I need to remain faithful to, and then leaning on the faithfulness of God has allowed for that season to I think go pretty well. You know what I mean? Like, I'm thankful to be able to say that, because I know there's a lot of guys who struggle and they have a really, really hard season. My sort of season that I've kind of found myself going through, and I think I'm on sort of the other side of, wasn't as bad as so many guys that are out there. You know what I mean? But I think we all deal with those things sometimes.
yeah,
So yeah, an occasional, hey man, you still doing good? How are you?
yeah,
Like how, just like in the same way that you might ask a guy that got kind of dinged up, his back hurts or like whatever. I think asking a guy, hey dude, like, is your heart good? Like, how are you? That's always good.
yeah. I love that. Anything else on your mind, or just any other thoughts you would want to share with guys that are listening?
Uh, no, 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 I don't think so. I would just say, reiterating, uh, you know, I I loved my season at Mainstage, because I really got to know those guys, and I kind of felt like they were like they were like my guys.
Mhm.
Like I want to take care of them, not take care of them, but like you know I want to be there for them. I want to that kind of stuff, and that's going to exist in a lot of different ways. Now now that exists for Rowdy and Bayside. I mean, that's kind of their thing now. That's kind of the beauty of shared leadership and passing on leadership. But I would just say, that the all the packs of F3 Omaha, it's really just one big web of relationships, and so take care of those, and build them up, and work on them, and check in on guys, and just be there for each other, because that's been such a huge thing for me, is just having all these guys around me that I can kind of reach out to whenever I need to, for whatever reason.
Yeah, awesome. Well, it's been great. The one thing we didn't get to talk about, maybe we'll do a second episode, but you've had a lot of great insight, at least for me, from a parenting perspective. How do you raise godly children and be the type of dad that your kids feel comfortable talking to and opening up with, and so I would just encourage guys. I mean, as you mentioned, you would love to walk shoulder to shoulder, with somebody that's going through a journey or has questions. So I would just encourage guys to connect with you, because I think you got a lot of wisdom, and you're also humble in sharing your experience. So I really appreciate you, man.
Thanks, man. Yeah,
But,
appreciate it.
we'll take it on in Namerama. Is that okay?
Sounds good.
All right, I'll start us off here. Brandon Plehardy, 36, The Plague.
The plague. Rob Hockney, 45, Sister Act.
Sister Act, and it's a Whoopi, right? That's
That's
the
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, appreciate you, man. Thanks for your time today. This has been good.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. Enjoy the rest of your day, man.
All right.